Is a reactive, task-focused leader, is that an oxymoron? Well, what are their traits? Focus on short-term rather than medium and long-term thinking. Let's have a look at the people-focused, proactive persons. Empowering people and teams leads to better outcomes. The people here build resilience. The fragile ecosystem always shows up on the spreadsheet too. These guys are the CEOs. You either feed your ego or you feed your kids. You decide. Hi there. What are the differences between a proactive and people-focused leader and a reactive and task-focused leader? And do the differences really matter? And perhaps more importantly, can those differences show up in a good way on the bottom line? You know that spreadsheet you look at the end of every month, the bottom right-hand corner? Can we see those things there? Before we answer that, consider this. Is a reactive, task-focused leader, is that an oxymoron? Well, yes it is. Reactive and task-focused isn't, but then when we put leader behind it, yes it is. It's like saying unbiased opinion, or controlled chaos, or working vacation, or friendly fire. It's just a contradiction, and it's just plain wrong. Other than super unusual times of critical stress and change, which of course can happen, but not every day, every single day, day in and day out for 3 years straight, then no. In the world of leadership, proactivity and people focus is the only sustainable answer to differentiated growth. Some words that spring to mind when I think of proactive and people-focused leaders that we work with are empathetic, collaborative, trustworthy and trusting, resilient, developmental, adaptable, future-focused, all of those cool and groovy things. And I'm sure you're like that too. Some words that spring to mind when I think of reactive and task-focused leaders that we've worked with that are like that all of the time. How do these fit? Short-sighted, impatient, micromanaging, controlling, firefighting, frustrated, overwhelmed, stress, and so on and so on and so forth. Well, I know which of those two lists I'd rather be used to describe me. How about you? We've put together this episode today specifically to help you figure out how to put reactivity and task focus in the rear view mirror, and how to move forward with a powerful, proactive and people-focused approach. And finally, stop managing and start leading. With that said, welcome to Stop Managing and Start Leading. This is the podcast for leaders who need to stop managing and for managers who want to start leading. And I'm your host, Antonio Garrido. I'm the founder and president of My Daily Leadership. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm a business founder and leader just like you. I'm a 3-time author, and I have led businesses from grad level startups all the way to Fortune 60s with, I guess, billions in revenue and thousands of employees. What if I told you that the secret to exceptional leadership is much easier and much closer than you think? And every leader and every manager has the potential to become exceptional, the kind of leader that they, their people, and their business truly deserve. And you are no exception. You simply need to discover the mindsets, tools, competencies, and habits to unlock that potential in yourself, your people, and your business. And that's where we come in. So before we begin, there's someone I'd like you to meet. Say hello to our dear friend, our old friend, the subscribe button. We go way back. Subscribe to the My Daily Leadership YouTube channel today for actionable insights and practical tools in our podcast episodes that drop every single week. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, well, you might need to meet our other dear friend, the follow button. Both will help you to level up our leadership, and do it now. Story time. You know, I remember a day when a direct report of mine, clever individual, came and knocked on my door. "Got a minute, boss?" he said. he seemed a bit concerned, but sure, I said. Come in, sit down, lovely to see you, what's up? And he said something that sounded a little bit like this. He said, you know how you're always telling us that we need to move up, get more helicopter vision, get out of the weeds, be more of a leader than a manager, right? And I said, well, yeah, of course, that's exactly right. Well done, do that. And he then asked me why that was important. I fell for it and I took him at his word, and I told him all of the good textbook stuff, and it was all right. And then he asked me how on earth he was supposed to do any of that when I continued to give him 1 million reports to complete, 1 million KPIs to track, 1 million tasks to do, 1 million hard deadlines, 1 million issues to resolve quickly, 1 million fires to put out, 1 million goals that change from one week to the next. You get the idea. And he was right. I was telling him to do one thing whilst forcing him to do another. And whose fault was that? Mine or his? Of course, that's ever mine. Have you ever watched 7-year-olds play soccer? It's terrific. When you watch 7-year-olds play soccer, the ball goes over here and 20 kids swarm to the ball, and then the ball goes over here, and then they swarm to that ball, then the ball comes over here, and then they swarm there, and the ball goes over there. And that's how I was running my team. I was giving them this. I was putting the ball over here and expecting them to swarm around it, and then I was moving the ball over here, and then over here, and then over here, and then over here, and I wasn't giving them chance to develop their players and work out a strategy. And I was just creating 7-year-old soccer. I was asking my people to play soccer for 7-year-olds, and that's not fair. So let's understand all of that a little bit better. If you ever join us on YouTube, you'll know that we always introduce you to a critical leadership model or two. I think it's just one today. But anyway, we draw them out. And we're visual learners here at My Daily Leadership. We're VLs. So if you're listening on a podcast platform, that's probably because you're more of an auditory learner, our ALs. And that's terrific too, and we love you just as much. But if you want to see the content we're about to talk through and walk through and draw out in real time, then you're just going to have to switch over to YouTube either now or later. The models we draw in this episode, past episodes, and all future episodes are also available as complimentary downloads. That means free on our website, all the w's.mydailyleadership.com/podcast. Okay, enough of that nonsense. Let's get down to business. So if you've seen one or two of our previous episodes, you'll have seen this model. I'm not going to draw the whole thing. I'm just going to really quickly remind you. If you haven't seen it, then you may be at a tiny disadvantage. So go back and check those out too. We talk about a principle that a leader at any particular time, maybe even a manager also, at any particular time can be being proactive, let's say, or reactive. They can be being people focused, or they can be being task focused. So at any particular time, someone can be proactive, or they could be reactive, they could be people focused, or they could be task focused. So we could plot what it is that they're doing, and at a particular time, if somebody's had a day where they've been pretty proactive and pretty people focused with a little task focus and reactivity, then we can say, you know, this individual has been living in this area today. And that's good, because that's what leadership looks like. Other than, of course, areas of super high stress, right? But anyway, proactive, people focused. That means you're doing the important, not urgent stuff. Okay. Sometimes you'll find yourself a different day where you're being task focused, reactive, not very proactive or people focused, and therefore you're living in this area. More of a manager. And that's okay too, situationally. It's just if it doesn't go on forever and ever and ever and a day, as I just mentioned earlier. And we talk about this in some detail in a previous episode. So go check that out. But what I want to do today is I actually want to also dive into this, looking at it from a slightly different perspective. So check out that previous episode and pay attention to what we're going to cover today. So to save a little time, what I've done, not much time, I admit I've just drawn this super quick 4-box model, right? Because you know what fans we are of 4-box models. And I kind of want to talk to you about, let's look at that model that I've just drawn with a slightly different perspective, with a slightly different pair of glasses on. And if you want to draw it out with us, that's terrific. We don't talk much about drawing the models out with us, but if you could start to do that, that's so much better because you'll actually start to learn them. But let's overlay task focus down here and people focus. So for our auditory listeners, I've just 4-box model, bottom left task focus, bottom right people focus, bottom left along the y-axis we're going to put reactive here and proactive. Okay, so you get the idea. In this model here, we talked about the principle of moving up and to the right. Moving up and to the right is a really important principle of ours, and I want you to bear that in mind also, or the principle of moving up and to the right, bear that in mind as we go over today's model. So keep that in your head. Let's go back to the model that we've just started. What I'd like us to do is if we take each of these boxes and split them into 2 like that, what I'd like us to think about is the kind of leader that's task focused and proactive, for example. What are their traits? Okay, and then for each of these boxes we can overlay the traits on top of this model, right? The kind of traits for each of those individuals. And then where do those traits come from? Well, they come from beliefs, right? So let's also think about the beliefs of these people. All right, so we're kind of ready to begin now. So for each of these quadrants, whether it's task focus and proactive or people focus and reactive, we split each of those quadrants into 2. And we're going to consider the traits of those individuals in that particular quadrant and the belief sets of those individuals that kind of make them behave in that particular way. All right, so let's just start in the top left-hand quadrant, right? Don't know. But so we have a task-focused, proactive individual. Well, what are their traits? And you're probably ahead of me already because these individuals are particularly, let's say they're goal-driven. Okay, so very driven by goals. Maybe they're pretty organized and probably quite detail oriented. Pretty good at anticipating challenges, and they delegate pretty well. Okay, so individuals who are task focused and proactive are pretty goals driven, they're organized, they're detail oriented, they anticipate challenges, and they delegate. I'm going to go, well, okay, that's pretty good. Okay, well, let's see. Let's have a look at the people focused proactive person. So this is people focused and proactive instead of task focused and proactive. Well, what are they like? Well, the people that are people focused and proactive, well, they're very interested in team development, which is good, right? They're also interested, of course, in company development because they're developing the team. You can't develop your company if you don't develop your team. So let's say company development. And let's say that this individual is a particularly strong communicator. think, they're pretty good too. Okay, well, let's see. Now let's have a look at task-focused reactive. So that's down in the bottom left. Task-focused reactive, right? The knee-jerk guy. But, this knee-jerk guy is probably pretty good at problem solving. And let's say particularly on the fly, right? So on the fly, if that makes sense. I hope that works in America. I'm sure it does. Focus on short-term rather than medium and long-term thinking. So let's think about I don't want to say short-termism, so I'll just say short-term thinking. Okay, and they are micromanagers. And again, situationally, that might be the right thing to do. Okay, now let's have a look. Bottom right, people-focused and reactive. So people-focused and reactive, these guys are normally overly accommodating. They react to emotional needs rather than logical. They struggle with boundaries. Situationally, maybe that's important. Okay. At the head of today's episode, I said, how are you most of the time, right? Or I alluded to that, at least. If we are always task-focused and reactive all the time, always and all the time, that tells us something. If we are people-focused and reactive all of the time, that tells us something about ourselves too, because we can recognize them in those traits. And then where do those traits come from? Well, those traits come from beliefs. So we have to think about the beliefs. If we're always proactive and task-focused, that tells us something. And if we're always people-focused and proactive, that tells us something too. So we've got to think about, where is it that we want to live? Where is it that we want to live all the time? If we're constantly reactive and task-focused, like the 7-year-olds playing soccer, well, then that's not leading, is it? That's managing. And that has its place, of course. But let's be intentional about what we're doing. And I'm going to stop myself right there. And we're going to come back to this model in a minute. The reason I'm going to stop myself is I want to talk to you instead about something else that's really important. Now, don't ask me who, but a little birdie told me that you haven't taken the My Daily Leadership health check yet. Tut tut. If you want to become an extraordinary leader, and who doesn't, and if you're watching this, you do, it's important to know where you're starting from and where your gaps are and how those gaps are limiting yourself, your people, and your business. And only then, when you figure that out, can you really begin to intentionally close the gaps by developing your strengths and, more importantly, improving your weaknesses, like this model that we're looking at right now. Head to www.mydailyleadership.com or click the link in the description right now and diagnose your own personal leadership challenges. And it only takes 5 minutes with our leadership health check tool. Do me a favor though, and be really honest with your answers, would you? The more truthful you are, the more accurate your diagnosis will be, and then the clearer your leadership development roadmap will look. And don't forget, as ever, share your thoughts, questions, and comments, and any aha moments with us in the comments. We would love to hear those from you too. Remember, don't let 5 minutes hold you back from what's holding you back. Okay, let's get back to the model. Okay, so we've been talking about some traits. Let's talk about some beliefs. What are the beliefs of a task-focused, proactive individual? Well, the beliefs are success requires planning and prep. Okay, and I like that. They are process-driven. And if you've stuck around with us for a while, you know how important processes are. Good processes shore up businesses. So that's important. What are the the beliefs of the people-focused, proactive person? That's the people-focused, which we like, and proactive, which we also like more. Well, this person, their belief They believe in the long-term relationship of people. So they believe in long-term relationships. And they believe that those long-term relationships are key to success. And that's good, because that's with customers and suppliers too, and peers. And they believe in empowering people and teams. That empowered people and teams equals, right, better outcomes, always. So empowering people and teams leads to better outcomes always. So that's really, really good. What about task focus and reactors? Well, they believe that efficiency is all. That efficiency, let's say, matters even more than people. Again, situationally, yes, but all the time, no. They think that deadlines and results trump everything, come first. Situationally, maybe, all the time, no. People focused and reactive, that's people focused good, reactive bad, but okay. What they believe is keeping everyone happy is important, which of course it's impossible to do. Keeping everyone happy can't be done. And harmony trumps results, which of course isn't true. Okay, so we're starting to get a picture of what these four individuals look like. Let's try and think about what this is. A huge generalization and sweeping generalization. I get it. But just go with the principle for me, if you would. And please, no letters of complaint, because I know entirely what I'm doing here. Sticks people into pigeonholes, but just go with me for the principle of it. People that are proactive and task focused, these guys are kind of more than anything else, they are like the financial controllers of this world, okay? Does that mean financial controllers can't be people focused? Yeah, of course they can. Just go with the principle, right? What happens if someone is always reactive and always task focused? Well, these guys are more like the emergency services, right? The ER doctors and the paramedics and all of that kind of stuff. So let's say ER doctor. So these guys are kind of the financial controllers of the world. These guys are the ER doctors of this world. These guys that are people focused and reactive, these are more the social workers. And there's a place for social workers, and great, there's nothing wrong with that, except if we don't want to be a social worker forever, because these guys are the CEOs. Now, Satya Nadella from Microsoft, I'm sure you know who that is. Check him out if you don't. Nadella. This here, this proactive and people focused, this is his favorite place that he wants all of the exec team and all the senior managers and all the managers to be. Satya says that everybody should be here to the extent that they possibly can be, as much as they possibly can be. Why? Because he said that the people here build resilience. And the resilient leaders make a resilient organization. The people down here, right, down this end of the world, which are task focused and reactive, these guys here, well, these guys are resilient leaders. These guys aren't resilient leaders. These guys are fragile leaders. That's actually, this is going to hurt, by the way, some of you. This is ego-based, right? It's ego-based. My brother says, you either feed your ego or you feed your kids. You decide. And I kind of like that as a principle. So if these guys building an ecosystem, these guys build an ecosystem. And that's what you want to build, because resilient ecosystems do show up in the bottom right hand corner of the spreadsheet every month. Eventually they do. It always does. And actually the fragile ecosystem always shows up on the spreadsheet too. Eventually. Why? Because what happens down here, where we've got resilient teams and leaders and businesses up here, what do we have down here? Well, eventually we have burnout. And it's bound to happen. And who's responsible for that? You are. That's why it's fragile. That's why it's ego-based, right? It's not where we want to be. So where do we want to be? In terms of consistency, not situational emergencies, and I get it, they do happen. Well, we want, as usual, to go up and to the right, wherever we can, for whatever, to the extent that we possibly can. So we've got to be thinking about, we've got to be interested in our people, we've got to be interested in the team and the development and comfort development, we've got to be strong communicators, we've got to think about long-term relationships, and we've got to empower people because they always give us better outcomes. And those are the kinds of things that we're after. Okay, well, I think we're going to leave that for today. I hope you found that model useful. Think about where you live and where you should live. And I get it. Occasionally in times of high stress and crisis, you have to be in the bottom left. But to the extent that it's possible, you need to move top right, because leaders live bottom left, not great ones. But leaders also live top right, the great ones. So thanks again for tuning in to Stop Managing and Start Leading. I hope that helped in some way. This was another My Daily Leadership podcast, and whatever your reason for listening or watching today, I do hope that gave you something of value, even if it's just one tool or tip that improves your leadership ability by only 1%. Remember, there's immense power in marginal gains over time. There's also power in community, so please do share your questions, any insights, topic suggestions. We love those in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. And whilst you're down there, give this video a like and a share. All of that good stuff. Subscribe. Stick the alarm on so that you know as soon as it drops, you can go dive into it. So go on. You know you want to. And for our auditory learners, that's our ALs, you're only getting half the story, I'm afraid. I mean, we're glad that you join us, but we do recommend heading over to YouTube, where today's episode really comes to life with visual notes, models and drawings. There was only really one drawing today, but I think it's an important one. All the models are available as complimentary, that means free, and the downloads at www.mydailyleadership.com/podcast. Okay, I know you're dying to know. So in the next episode, what we're going to cover, one of my favorite topics, is the smartest questions that the smartest leaders ask themselves and others in order to build the smartest businesses. So if you want to know a little bit more about that kind of stuff, well then do the smart thing. Hit the subscribe button so that you'll know the moment it drops. Okay, so I'm Antonio Garrido. Thanks for joining. I'm with My Daily Leadership. Thanks for being here. Until next time, by wisdom and effort, up and to the right, please. See you next time.